Okay, Ms. Willa, it's all you.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Thanks everyone for joining for the Saguache County Part 2 listening session. Part 1 was Saguache Center, which we did a few weeks ago. And today's meeting is a virtual meeting, and we'll be covering Crestone and Moffat. So the intent of our meeting today is to give you a little overview. A little overview of the findings of the 2021 San Luis Valley Housing Assessment and a lot of the community-specific information for Moffat and Crestone comes from this countywide assessment. We wanted to share some key metrics of these two communities and then have a discussion with this group about sort of vision and opportunities. And we have some questions queued up for you to cover that. So we'll go to our agenda, which I'd love to start with introductions. Then I'll speak, but I'll keep it brief, about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll move into our group discussion. So why don't we go around the virtual room with who's here today. And I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Willa Williford, a housing consultant based in the Gunnison Valley. I've been working with Don Melgaris since last year on this housing assessment and strategic planning work. And on my team is Andrew Coburn and Sam Snyder. So I'll pass that to Andrew next for his introduction.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Andrew Coburn with Urban Rural Continuum, as Willa mentioned, part of the consulting team, and really excited that you took time out of your morning to be with us. Look forward to the conversation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. I've been working with Willa as well on this report and excited to hear your feedback.
Thank you. Andrew A., do you want to go next?
Of course. I'm Andrew Ashley, housing development specialist covering the San Luis Valley in Southwest Colorado. That's
all. Lisa?
Good morning. My name is Lisa Bodie. I'm a director of the Crestone Energy Fair. So we do a lot with building design and working with all of our town agencies and local organizations. And I'm here with 2 other members of the community.
Hi, I'm Mary Lowers. I'm the president of Neighbors Helping Neighbors, which is our local nonprofit of almost 30 years. And our mission is to help people in crisis. And needless to say to y'all, housing is the crisis.
My name is Nick Navarez. I'm actually the producer of the Crestone Energy Fair. I'm also a local realtor, so this is interesting information as well.
Great. Akia?
Actually sitting in my mechanic's office, so that's why you don't see me. So Akia Tanara, I'm working with Crestone Peak Community Housing and we are working on a project to develop 20 small homes for seniors in the town of Crestone. And on to someone else.
Oh, he might have stepped away. Okay, is it Kristen?
Unmute, start video here. That was a little complicated. Hi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Kirsten Schreiber and I'm the chair of Crestone Peak Community Housing in Crestone. And working together with Akia on developing affordable housing, 20 units in the town of Crestone, and very aware of the housing problems in our county.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Stephen, I see you unmuted. Are you back?
Good morning.
Hello.
I didn't quite hear my name.
That's okay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Stephen Hume. Good morning, all. I'm a trustee with the town of Crestone and going to listen in on this.
Thank you. Is it Chris? Alana?
Yeah, hi. I'm Kairos Alana, and I'm actually a single mom who's looking to find non-traditional housing in Crestone. So I'm just here to listen.
Great. Sorry, I said your name wrong.
Oh, it's okay.
How about, is it Dea?
Good morning. This is Dea here. I am a Crestone neighbor, and I also sit on the board of trustees, and really happy to meet all you. Thank you.
Thank you. How about Dale?
Good morning. My name's Dale Halley. I live in Baca Grande and a member of the Environmental and Architectural Committee.
Great. Sorry, we're trying to take notes here of who's all here. Star?
Hi. I've lived in Crestone for 7 years. I'm not there now. I lost my housing and I'm trying to make my way back, but I can't afford housing in Crestone. So I'm very concerned and interested with this issue, and I'm just listening in.
Great, thank you. I think it says Swaye? Sorry, I'm probably saying that wrong. If I didn't call your name, can you go ahead and unmute yourself and speak?
Oh, yeah. I thought you had to unmute me. No, my name is Swaha. Nice to see you, Star. Like her, I am a low-income senior and have basically been homeless for 3.5 years because the rents have tripled in the last 5 years at least. And so I'm just interested in the conversation, and yeah, thought I'd listen in.
You're welcome. Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, my name is...
I mean, you're hiding up there.
No worries. My name is Evan Samora, and I'm the director for the Swatch County Housing Authority.
Thank you. I'm trying to go through all my pictures here, but I feel like I've missed anybody else. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, well, I'm Dawn Milgaris. I am the director of the Soundless Valley Housing Coalition. And like Willa said, I'm the one that started this process, and I'm working with a large team from around the valley to make this housing city happen in all 6 counties and 14 communities. Some of the communities we've combined together because of their size and location. We are working to get you guys the data you need to make housing more affordable and fit the needs of your individualized community. And this has been a great adventure. And my nonprofit is here to help bring the action planning, which is the next phase, to reality over the next 5 to 10 years in your community, hopefully sooner, but we do understand that housing development takes a little bit of time. So we're here to help with that in any way we can, and we're very excited to have all of you with us today.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and everyone on the phone.
Willa, this is Andrew. If I could jump in, just wanted to bring it to your guys' attention that we're actually looking at the presentation view. I'm not sure if you want to change that on your end.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, it would probably be better if you all could just see the clean slides.
Is that better?
That's great. Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Super. All right, well, let's jump in on the overview. And so as Dawn mentioned, this is the it was a 6-county area assessment that had the high level findings for what are the commonalities across the whole area. And then now we're into this individual communities and what are the unique attributes of which we're finding many. And we hope that you'll help us refine and make those more clear for Crestone and Moffat today. So we can keep going with the slides. Other way. Oh, no, you're right. Sorry. So this is available on Dawn's website, which was actually posted in the chat by Andrew, the correct URL here. And so if you're a data nerd and you're into the sort of backstory of all of these findings, there's the depth of information is there. But in a very broad brush, big picture overview, here are the key sort of puzzle pieces that we found that are all sort of intertwined around this housing problem that everyone's experiencing. So I think several people mentioned the stress and strain of the increases that they're experiencing. These home prices up 66% and rents up 30% over the past 12 years, which is when the last assessment was done. It sounds like specific to Crestone, the rents are up quite a bit more. So we may want to highlight that a bit more in the report. The high cost of construction is meaning that even as those prices are increasing, the market isn't responding the way that we hope it would to meet those needs. And that the price point at which construction is profitable is quite high, and it's leaving a lot of people behind in terms of their housing needs. So as that happens, more and more people are stressed with their high housing payments, leaving less money for the other things you need to thrive in your life. And so, and that's pervasive throughout the valley for both renters and owners, more so for renters though, who are more vulnerable to price increases. And then we have, as people aren't able to find the housing they want close to where they live, there's more finding housing some other place and being required to commute as opposed to sort of choosing to commute. So we gave the one example of the cost to commute from Del Norte to Alamosa. That's just illustrative, but it could be as much as rent in that example, and some of the commutes are even further. Another dynamic, and I think this is definitely something that's happening in Saguache County, is residential sprawl. So a lot of what new development is occurring is disproportionately occurring in the unincorporated county, where it's more expensive both to live and for local government to serve those areas. And so, I think some discussion around how do we be constructive around bringing development close to where water, sewer, snowplow, the services are, jobs, groceries, et cetera, I think is part of what I hope to have in the conversation today. There's also limited housing choices. And I think this was already mentioned around someone seeking non-traditional housing for herself and her child, as well as people seeking opportunities to age in place. The housing in the Valley in general and in Crestone and Moffat is very much oriented towards single family homes, and with manufactured homes being a close second. But those end up being very similar in terms of what it's like to live there. And then there is an aging population. There's, what we observe is some hollowing out of the working age demographic. And that has some, challenges that loop back into our labor shortage and that dynamic of the increasing prices, making it hard to attract and retain the people we need in our jobs. So we will move, and we can skip this one. Just a little bit more on the backstory there of when we were collecting our data. We talked extensively with employers, both interviews and a survey. And one of the questions was about how severe do employers feel the availability of affordable housing is. And 83% of employers, if you kind of add up these pieces of the pie chart, felt that it was a problem. So pretty strong consensus there from the people who are directly dealing with hiring and retaining. And so, you know, we looked at also factors around retiring employees, job growth, functional, rental, and for sale markets. Oh, did someone have a question? I'll keep going. So through all the data that we looked at, we came to a recommendation that if we look out to 2026, the Valley needs about 1,885 units. And that is, we do not recommend that you swing for the fences and do this whole amount. And there's lots of different ways from a policy and funding perspective that you might seek to focus on different communities and different types of housing, but this is the big picture. And so if we go to the next slide, you know, how Saguache County fits into that is, you know, if we were to locate the housing based on where jobs are, we think we need about 222 units in the county over the next 5 years. If we locate them based on where households are already located, the number is closer to 300. Saguache being a little bit of a exporter of workers as opposed to having a lot of jobs. So, and then as you, we'll get into how does that relate to the individual communities in a minute. So our key recommendations out of the needs assessment, the Valley-wide needs assessment, were that economic development and housing need to go hand in hand. You know, I think there's strong efforts in both and a lot of realization that the two are very much linked. We can't have a ton of great jobs without housing. We won't fill those jobs or be successful with them. And we also need good jobs to support people's, support people in the Valley with their income and opportunities. So more housing is needed across a spectrum of housing types and prices. There isn't like a single demographic that needs to be focused on or sort of a silver bullet approach to housing. A lot of small efforts and a lot of different kinds of housing types would be what we would recommend. You know, and I think this is particularly true with Crestone and Moffat. We have one valley with there are many things in common and there are many things that are completely unique to your community. And it's exciting to work in these places that each have their own really distinct character. And we want to make sure we're getting that right. So that's part of today's work. We also are very much recommending to start small and build upon promising practices. There's already great work that is being done and has been done in the Valley, but in places where significant development hasn't occurred in a long time, we want to make sure we prove up the market and that we don't put a lot of public or private money at risk before we're certain that this will be successful. And then we strongly encourage that all like funding and regulatory decisions are always made through a lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion, so that we are not creating winners and losers, but we're creating the opportunity that everyone has equal opportunity and access to these resources and opportunities that are being created to elevate the whole community and not segregate or disadvantage people. So. So with that, I just wanted to introduce this housing bridge, which has been a helpful tool to think about. Area median income is a tool is a name that our funders use a lot as they target what kinds of funds they award and what kinds of housing they are creating. So AMI is the acronym here in the chart, and what we're seeing is that red and orange segment of the market is where your greatest needs are. And there's also quite a bit of need in the missing middle. And so that's where we would encourage you to focus. There's certainly some gaps in the market rate housing environment as well, but certainly the focus of our recommendations and reports are on the left side of this spectrum. So let's move into the key metrics of these two communities. So in terms of, and I think we'll focus a little bit on Crestone since we have so many more people from that community calling in today. So we focused on the town of Crestone specifically, and I've gotten some really great comments in terms of needing to really think about Crestone and the Baca together. And so that will be something that's integrated into the next iteration of the draft. And to recognize that community, there's more to it than just the town limits. So certainly when we look at just the town, really distinct absence of anything besides single family homes. Quite a small community in terms of population overall, but you are such an important regional hub and so renowned in terms of a special place and a destination and unique building. And there's a lot of things that really set Crestone apart. And I understand why people have such a profound connection there. So, the market is incredibly tight, as you all know. It's not functioning very well. We were only able to find one place for rent. We monitored the market for 6 months, looking under every rock to try to find listings. And then, in terms of the homes that are listed for sale, the median price point was way beyond what the local income support. So, I think there's a very remarkable opportunity with the work Crestone Peak Community Housing is trying to do here, and the fact that they've gotten this, very shovel ready. So I think that's a really bright spot in terms of responding to the need. And I did receive a question about, is our data sort of before or after that project? And I will make that much more clear in the report because this is above, what we're recommending is above and beyond what Crestone Peak is doing. So let's move on. This is a detailed slide, but I encourage you, if you're interested in the data, to dig in here, because this is where we kind of line up what are those incomes with what people can afford for sale and for rent, and where that greatest need is. So this kind of relates back to the housing bridge we talked about and our recommendations based on just allocating the need to Crestone based on the size of the community. So that, like I said, this is above and beyond the work that Crestone Peak is doing, kind of assuming that comes to fruition, which I very much hope it does. So we also put in a number of recommendations and considerations, kind of reiterating that the starting small and mitigating risk and the emphasis on the need for rental housing, but certainly that that home ownership opportunities are needed too. So in terms of potential goals and actions in Crestone, this is where later in our discussion we may end up rounding this out a good bit, but so far very much we're very aligned in terms of seeing the need for senior rental housing. We're recommending expansion of the use of Dawn's programs, the down payment assistance and home rehabilitation funds, loans that she has. And we also, the Energy Resource Center energy retrofits are something that could be used more extensively here. We have listed acquisition and renovation of rundown and abandoned homes. It's a little bit different in Crestone than some of the other communities like Moffat. And so we could discuss if that's really on point. And then, seeking land for future potential development. I'm intrigued to know if there are, lands owned by town or or the county or other local institutions that might be timely for discussion. Because I think that, sort of starting to plan the next project so that when Crestone Peak Community Housing is leased up, you're ready to go with another project that responds to the needs and is solutions oriented would be a good thing. So let's I'll just briefly touch on Moffat, and then we'll move to our discussion piece. Moffat is very small community as well, and it has a little more variety in terms of the mix of housing types, but still very much heavily dominated by single family and mobile homes. And we were unable to find anything for sale or for rent. And in our conversations with Sarah White at the school district, she reiterated extensively the challenges of hiring and retaining at all levels in terms of experience and expertise for the school. And we've been intrigued about the opportunity to work on school district lands to potentially build some teacherage housing. And then we also want to add to this slide the issue of abandoned homes because that's very present in that community, and the opportunity to fix up those and bring them back to life. So moving on, this is the same kind of take on what's needed in Moffat, and again, we're emphasizing rentals. We can keep going. And then, the goals here, goals and potential actions. An interesting piece is that, it's really hard to even get traction because there's not much clarity around in the municipal code. So that'd be a good starting place of just giving anyone who wants to build or redevelop a home the rules of the road. And then, the school district land is an important one. And then the abandoned homes piece that I already mentioned. So, we can add to this list, or if some of these things don't resonate, we can take them off, but this is our starting place for, where we might go in the next phase of strategic planning and implementation. So now I'd love to open it up to the group. Just, in terms of what we've presented so far, are we on the right track? Is there anything missing from your community and local housing market description? I think that, and then, how could we make this document more helpful to you? So our process will be to take, we've already received some really great feedback, so we'll be turning a new draft in about a week, and then we'll be making a call for final comments by July 23rd. So you have, a couple chances to look at and review and respond, but I think that I'd love to hear kind of how you feel about how we're doing so far.
I'm happy to hear that you're gonna include the BACA in the Crestone aspect of the study. I think that will be very helpful because that's a pretty big chunk of population just down the street from the actual town of Crestone. I was surprised at how few housing units were projected to be needed in Crestone. I had done a mail-based housing survey a couple of years ago, and close to half of the results from the 5 zip codes I sent them to in Saguache County were from Crestone. So what are the factors that you're seeing that are different between Crestone and, say, the town of Saguache? Because if I remember correctly, the projected housing need for Saguache was 20-something units, and Crestone is lower. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Evan, and thank you. Because the recommendation that we have so far is just based on an allocation by population. And so I think that I think we need to bring in a lot of some more qualitative observations, as well as recognize how when you add the BACA, there's how much more critical mass of population you have there. So, the information from this group today and, some of the data around the wait list for the Crestone, for your survey, and the wait list for the Crestone peak community housing all backs up I think the ability for us to recommend more here. And I also think, I think we had made a comment already that if we're trying to move away from all the development happening in the unincorporated counties, that we are going to need to bring more into the incorporated areas and be a little more aggressive on those projections. So yeah, that was strictly like allocation based on the number of households, but the next version you'll see will probably have a larger number.
Nice.
Other questions or sort of gut check about if we're on the right track, or how, or things you might be hoping for in the document that you are not seeing?
This is Swaha, just along the same lines as the last comment. It's kind of, for Saguache County, it's a fatal flaw in your study. So I don't even know, how you can talk about or pretend to talk about reality when you didn't include the Baca and the population of the Baca in the Crestone piece. I mean, I'm kind of curious how that even happened in the first place. When somebody is designing a study, you usually do some field research before you just launch into something that basically is, I mean, it might not be useless for other parts of the valley for sure, but for the Crestone Baca piece, it's completely, I mean, it's basically false data, completely false data that you're working with. And so I'm not sure how you will ever make recommendations from that. And you say, well, yeah, we can consider that, but basically you did your study, and you did your study on false pretenses. And it's really, really frustrating because I know these studies actually take a lot of time and money. And it just is kind of mind-boggling, very honestly, that you managed to do one that didn't represent the situation at all on this side of the county.
Thank you for your comment. And I think, I want to just reiterate that the study is in draft and that we've been hearing loud and clear that the Baca needs to be included.
Okay.
And I will add as well that when I hired this company, we were very specific that we wanted to stay inside the limits of towns and cities that we were working in, because the goal of the study was infill and how do we bring more housing to where infrastructure already is. And you're not the first community that said we probably need to go a little bit further outside of city limits, which is why we're having these listening tours so we can hear the feedback from the community. But we did specifically request that we were looking inside city limits to start the process, because we did countywide studies in the initial housing needs assessment, which does mention that more is needed because it looks at the county as a whole. So it's not, we're hearing what you guys are saying about the Baca, and definitely going to get that added in there because it makes sense now that we're hearing where you guys are coming from. But it was just our initial look, and the way we were being funded really wanted things to be inside city limits. But we're happy to expand that so that the report fits the need of your community.
Other comments, questions, reactions?
How does employment opportunities impact the results of the number of units needed? Like in Crestone, seems to me there's far fewer employment opportunities compared to, say, Center or Saguache, where you have local government, school, CDOT, all those institutions.
Yeah, so we did we did employ we used the state demographers' employment or job projections and at the county level, and then to create the overall, to project the overall housing need, and then but in this case, throughout all of the community assessments, we selected when I showed that graph early in the presentation about the two methods of sort of locating housing where jobs are or locating housing where households are, we have used the locating housing where households are as the methodology for the ranges that we provide. As a community, you could decide, our policy priority is to focus more on locating them near jobs, or we're providing you the data, but where you want to go with that for action plans is something we want your feedback on, because here's sort of the baseline data from which to make decisions, but you then that's not the ultimate recommendation. The community needs to decide, yes, we want to focus our resources, here, there, or somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, reactions?
So Dawn, this is Kyrena, and I missed a part of it. I had another meeting and I'm just joining now. I would like to say on behalf of the town of Crestone, as you know, we've been a part of this since for a long time now, and our town has contributed, I believe, $1,000 towards our participation. The town has some land. We have one small tract that would perhaps offer 4 small units. And we have a larger tract of land, which, and we've talked about exchanging that for another tract of land from working with the local charter school, and for a comparable tract adjacent, which would actually open up the potential of having some additional number of affordable housing units. It could be a mix of multifamily, single family. I think we would be extremely interested in asking the group to, if that's possible, to help the community design that in the best way. And of all the issues facing the town of Crestone, I think there's no question that affordable housing is what we need most. We have nothing. People can't rent, they can't buy, they can't build. There's nothing. So, and I think that our plight is even more made difficult by the fact that we're a small rural community and the numbers just don't pencil in to make it work for a developer. I have the name of one potential developer in the Denver area that I haven't spoken to yet. But for years, whenever I go to a conference, a CML conference or whatever, I always speak with the developers and talk about coming to our community, and we're too remote, too small, not interested. So I'm hoping that our group can work with not only our community, but all of the small communities in the valley as well as Alamosa. But the small communities here are underserved, have been, and this is an opportunity to really help them now and going into the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those remarks and that offer in terms of the community-owned land and the potential exchange with the school. I think that would be a wonderful segue, because our next part of our meeting is to really dig into, we had proposed 3 topics, and those are goals, land and partnerships, and expanding existing programs and resources. So it feels like maybe based on your comments, why don't we jump into the land and partnerships discussion, and then we can circle back to goals and expanding resources if we have time. So can you speak a little bit more about
and my last comment is that we're having a special meeting next week to discuss another item, and I've added affordable housing to that agenda, and we will prepare some comments to send back in time for our July 9th meeting, and we'll send those to you, Dawn.
Okay, thank you.
It would be coming from the town board.
Wonderful. And we would love to have you a new version with that BACA data included prior to that meeting. When do you have a packet deadline?
The packet deadline's already come and gone, but if you were to send something to me and to our town clerk, Allison Ransom, we will put it into my mayor's report, and we will include it in our discussion.
Wonderful. We will do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, yeah. So,
Dawn, Dawn, sorry, I've just put the raised hand a while ago. Could I ask one more question or comment before you move on? Thank you.
It's not on our side. Sorry.
Oh, it's not showing up. Okay. I was just using the formality of you raised the hand on the screen. So
it could be just because I'm so far away from the computer, I'm not seeing it.
Okay. I just thank you so much for like expanding into the BACA, and I want to commend the town. Really has been doing a good job of with the Crestone Peak, looking at alternatives with our senior living and changing their ADU square footage to allow smaller living. So as we transition looking into the BACA, I'm curious, I guess one as a comment is, you know, the Airbnb, I'm wondering if that is going to be taken into consideration into these studies, if that's any effect, because that is probably one of our biggest reasons that we're not finding affordable rentals and housing. And then the just second, I guess, is more the comment is, you know, historically with our BACA Grande, we have a property owners association, and the way those covenants and the guidelines have been set up, it really is preventing us from being innovative and designing and changing to accommodate more non-traditional housing. And a lot of the design guidelines that actually provided for energy efficiency and helped with those costs in housing have been being removed from the conversation. And so we're just seeing a real shift in priorities from where the BACA used to be in its housing within the POA.
Thank you. Yes, we can absolutely include the Airbnb research or pursue that. And then would you have any, would it make sense for us to follow up with a specific person around the changes in the POA covenants, or is that something, could we connect offline about that?
Yeah, we'd love to connect with you as the Crestone Energy Fair. We've got Nick and then our past director, Donovan. We've been tracking a lot of the different pieces and you know, and we've gone to the POA offering solutions without follow-up of how we can be helping our housing situation and neighbors instead of going after them with lawsuits and legal fees, which makes it even harder for people to stay in our community.
Excellent, thank you. I would, yeah, let's connect, and maybe, Don, if you don't mind putting my email in the chat, I'd love to set up a time with the Crestone Energy Fair.
And Lisa,
Thanks,
is the email address you were emailing me from a good one to connect you with? So I can.
That one's perfect, because that'll get to all of us.
Okay, I will connect you and Willa after the meeting in an email, a combined email, so you guys can start a conversation.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
On the subject of the POA, I had looked at the regulations a while back, and it looked like many of the regulations would prevent the construction of multifamily housing. So any of our BACA and Crestone folks, have you heard of any talks at the POA at maybe being open to variances on their regulations or changing their regulations or anything like that?
No, I haven't heard of anything of that sort. Yeah, that's a very difficult one and probably a very long-term project to make some kind of change. So I was involved in that a few years ago and it didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Basically somebody would have to take it on and stick with it for many years to make it happen. Maybe we could. The thing is that the whole ownership, the whole property owner association would have to vote and agree on it. And there's these voting regulations that they have in participation that make it very difficult to make changes.
Okay.
So let's turn our attention to the land and partnerships conversation. Kyrena, would you be willing to share a little bit more about the land that you were describing?
The town owns a tract of land which is abutting immediately to the west of the land that's owned by the Crestone Charter School. That land, the town has had several federal funding grants to create a master plan, which did involve the entire community, the POA, the spiritual centers, different groups coming together. And so that tract of land is basically shovel ready to, I had spoken at the time with the head of DOLA and also the executive director of GOCO about funding for whatever use we might make of it. There were several ideas on the table. The issue with that tract of land is that it really it only has 2 sites, and we were talking about putting a library on one site and a center of some sort in another. And that master plan was done a few years ago. In the intervening time, affordable housing is so much more immediate and a basic pressing need that we have, that land is not as well suited for affordable complex apartments than the adjacent land. The problems with the land that have to be worked out. The land is now a part of the county, so it would have to go through the annexation process, and we would need to design. And the town, our town is a small town, and we really have to think about managing that. Perhaps the town could get financing to design and build something and then lease the land out for a nonprofit or for management and development. There's a lot to think about, but this fundamental fact remains that we do have a tract of land that consists of enough land to design, particularly if we were able to swap the land that we have for the land, a comparable tract immediately west of that, then we could have a road that would connect the Baca and Alder that was originally conceived of a long time ago. And the land would be better suited to multi-use, single-use apartment complexes. That's basically where we are.
How is the owner of the other land? How far along in this brainstorming are they?
The other land is owned by the Crestone Charter School. So the idea would be that we would trade with the charter school and give them the land that we now have, which is immediately adjacent to them and would give them capabilities that they don't have now. But in return, we would have a comparable, maybe a slightly larger, because of considerable money and time has been spent to create the master planning, and the fact that the current tract is something that we could work with right now with design and financing. So it's complicated as to how best we might go forward to serve the needs of the community, of our Crestone community, and take advantage of funding sources that may be available in the near term and not beyond. Those are all questions we don't know the answer to.
Yeah. What do others on the phone think of this idea? How does it resonate with you?
On Monday, I took a drive around Crestone and a little bit west of Crestone with County Commissioner Tom McCracken. And we had talked about the piece of land that you're referring to, Karina, the piece of land owned by the charter school right now. And the issue that the Housing Authority has right now is access to land. The Housing Authority as an entity, so we manage 2 properties, and those 2 properties are doing pretty well, but the Swatch County Housing Authority as an entity doesn't have a lot of resources, and having access to a piece of land is really important. So I would definitely like to talk with the town of Crestone more as this process moves forward.
And that's a great partnership to have because it gives you a lot of access.
My hope is that the board will discuss this a bit more in our meeting next week, and we will submit something to Dawn, and that will in turn create an opportunity for all of us to see what we can do best to serve our affordable housing needs, which are really acute.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Evan, this is Nick Navarez. Like I said, I'm a local realtor here, and I come across land on a regular basis that is either very inexpensive or very accessible. People ask all the time, what to do with property they don't want anymore and stuff like that. So I'd be happy to kind of talk about stuff like that with you. I also have some access through the Colorado Division of Real Estate for money in particular. That are actually a group called CHAPA. It's the Colorado Fair Housing Authority. They are looking for facilitators for grant money that they have to provide housing for low income and underpopulated areas in Colorado. I just got this, actually it's so interesting that I'm in this meeting today because I just got this message yesterday asking for partnerships with rural organizations who need money for providing housing. So connect with me and we'll, I can get you connected with that information.
Okay. Yeah, I just put my email address. Sorry.
But I just want to say that within the town boundaries, and that is the only area we're legally able to make decisions for, we don't have much land that I'm aware of that the town could just go out and buy that would be suitable for a multi-use housing, affordable housing development. Nick maybe has more knowledge than I do. He works here at Crestone.
And actually, I'd love to explore this a little further because it is interesting. One of the other comments I've received so far is just that we need to, it was recommending that we highlight more that there is a lack of land for sale, or that land being passed down generation to generation is kind of the typical thing in Crestone. And so so I'm intrigued, Nick, about your comment that you are seeing quite a bit of land available.
It's not necessarily in the town of Crestone, honestly. It's surrounding, like Karina mentioned, but it is in the immediate vicinity and in the county, which it would still be viable to put different types of housing onto. So, but yeah, we'll chat later and see what we can do.
Yeah, super. So I put my email address in the chat. So if you guys would copy and paste that, and then we can talk about it later.
Cool, thanks.
And I'll add that Jeff Owsley with CHAFA is normally at these meetings. However, he had a conflict with meetings today. And they are working on several things. They just put out their rural rehab RFP for organizations looking to do a rehab program similar to what the Housing Coalition does. And we're working with them on that as well. And the other thing they're working on is what's called their SHIP program, which is going to be a small housing unit initiative that they're doing to provide funding for units under, or for housing under 30 units at a time. And that may be some of the emails that you received, Nick, because they're putting that information out there now to try to figure out how many organizations and communities are really feeling there's going to be a need for these programs so that they're properly funding the programs next year. And I did see that Andrew actually with Division of Housing also stated that the Division of Housing has funding and is happy to talk to organizations and can provide names of organizations that are looking for land or housing opportunities if you want to connect. So if there's anybody you want to connect with, please reach out to me and we'll do our best to get you connected as we move forward.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or, sort of ideas, brainstorming, things we should consider as a group with regard to land and partnerships?
One other thing I wanted to bring up, and it speaks to your second question, is who is building in the community. That's the other issue, honestly, is that the number of builders in the general area are really few and far between. The main contractors who exist in this area have multi-year waiting lists. And many of them are now raising their minimums to an inaccessible level for most of the people, for a significant part of the population who would be able to, normally afford, let's say, a $200,000 house, but certainly can't afford a $400,000 house. And so that's another big issue that we face here, is that the lack of builders really limits what we can do even once we do have land, and that's something that, we at the Energy Fair are also trying to work with and figure out creative ways of, finding housing, builders here from the huge, group of owner builders that have an immense amount of knowledge here that's unlike anywhere else. But that is an issue that we're trying to address and that we see a need for, is more people who are willing to step up and build affordable houses here as well. I just want to speak to that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That's a really helpful constraint to acknowledge, and sounds like we are seeing that, or we've heard that across the valley, but it sounds like the pressures in Crestone are uniquely exacerbated. So,
Star, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I found a friend of mine has a property in Saguache, and he has a kind of dilapidated garage, which I'm starting to try to turn into housing for myself. And I'm just wondering if there's any organizations or money available I could apply for to get some help to restructure the building into a residence. Does anybody know? I'm not an organization, I'm just an individual, but is there any place I can apply for assistance?
So currently rehabilitation of ADUs, or turning buildings into ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units.
Yes.
And that second living space on the same lot of land is not available, but we are working really hard on fixing that. We're working with several funders to figure out a way to add that. CHAPA is one of them. They're looking at ways of how do they provide funding to bring in ADUs or repair ADUs, because it's not something that's currently happening. But I will If you have an email, if you want to put it in the chat so we have your contact, you can send it to me directly if you don't want everybody to have it, and we'll put you on the list for that. And then as it happens, we'll definitely reach out and let you know.
Thank you. And I am on a waiting list for senior housing in Crestone, but I fear that once it's available, even if I could get a space, I probably can't afford it. Even, I don't know what kind of rents they're going to come up with, but I can only handle about $300 a month. So that's pretty low. And I don't think that they could afford to have the rent that low unless it was subsidized. So any information on what the rents on those senior housing places are likely to be once they're done?
I can't give you any specific numbers, but we have looking at rents as low as you're mentioning. And that would be for they're small units then, just studio. I mean, all of the units are going to be small. Studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. 2 bedroom is under 700 square feet. So yeah, we are looking at that, and that is our goal, to provide exactly that kind of low rent. And from what I understand,
keep up the good work.
Yeah, well, what I understand and hope, yeah, I mean, it could be, it might have to be subsidized. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was a great example, though, of where we need to draw funding in to address that kind of project, like bringing back a dilapidated accessory unit, because that would be, I think it would be great both for you to have an affordable place to live and for, increasing the quality of the housing in that neighborhood.
Daya, you have your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if there has ever been, that you know of, any kind of successful initiative to sort of incentivize homeowners who are using the Airbnb to rent to local neighbors. If there's any possible way to try to make it worth people's while to rent to local people.
Great question. This comes up all the time. I work in a lot of resort communities, and this is a big topic. So yes, there are places that have done some pretty interesting things around this. The first one that comes to mind is the Summit Combined Housing Authority. They created a program where they basically, it was like a guarantee. So if you switch from Airbnb to renting to a long-term local, they'll provide the property management as well as part of the security deposit. And they'll all, and I believe at one point they even were putting some money towards it, so that if you were making $1,000 a month doing Airbnb, but you were only going to rent it for $800 a month, they'd pay the difference. So that's one that I definitely recommend. That's one that's been up and going for a while, and they were really excited about it, because it's just through that sort of little bit of money, you can change the use of a unit overnight, as opposed to the long lead time of building something new. So that one's pretty cool. Then in Crested Butte, they have a very limited number of licenses. So that's how they control short-term rentals there. If you want to short-term rent, you have to kind of get in line, trying to leave the rest of the inventory open for long-term rentals. So there's different ways of going about it. I like the topic of incentives generally. I know Leadville is grappling with it a lot right now too, and trying to come up with some new things. So yeah, if that was something, that is certainly something we could add to the areas of focus for implementation, because there's, and then a first step could be kind of looking at peer communities.
Very cool. Thanks for that. It sounds like the POA of the BACA might be an obstacle there, but something that the town might be able to look at. Great, thank you.
Absolutely. And yeah, the other place that you could regulate this potentially is the county. So that's tough, because the characteristics of the communities across the county might not all agree that short-term rentals are a problem. But if you were really trying, well, I'm just brainstorming now. So we'll take more later. So one other thing, as I think as we're wrapping up land and partnerships is just, I think I wanted to acknowledge how much work Crestone Community Peak has done in terms of forging these relationships for the design, the financing, thinking through how would they build and manage this. And so, that project feels like it's very much on the brink of being ready to go. And so I don't know that it will be something that you could exactly take up and replicate somewhere else. But it seems like many of the challenges that we've raised in the report, they are kind of one step ahead of us of solving them. So just thank you to all the people with the legwork on that.
Lisa, did you have another question?
No, it's me, Mary, but I'm here with Lisa. My only comment is I think everywhere, but particularly in Crestone and Baca, one thing to look at with short-term rentals would be, are the people running the Airbnbs or short-term rentals residents, or do they live out of state? I think that could be a demarcation. We have a lot of people with second or third homes not living here running short-term rentals.
That is a great point. And actually, in the when Crested Butte was putting their regulations in place, they ended up with two different kinds of licenses. One is for local residents, that kind of scenario of like, I'm a local resident, and in order to be able to afford to live here, I go somewhere else for 2 months and short-term rent my house, and that's how I cover my mortgage, versus the investment owner, the person from out of town, or the person who has a second, third, fourth home. So they have the owner, the local resident has one kind of license, and it's restricted to like 90 days, and it's very inexpensive. The unlimited license, they call it, is for the second homeowner type, and those are the ones that are hard to get and they're expensive. So yeah, that's a great distinction, and certainly very possible to regulate it in that way. Super. So let's move now. We're going to go kind of back into slide deck 1, just to talk about goals and, I think goals and priorities. And I think we've heard a lot of things so far, and but I'd just like to focus in on this. If you all can sort of take a moment to quietly reflect on, what would success look like, and, what do you feel the highest priorities are? We'd love to hear that.
Karina? You're muted.
I was. It's a difficult question. For right now, we have such a severe need for affordable housing. Sometimes I wish that there could be more Section 8 sorts of designations for our county, because I think we have very few Section 8 authorities for people. And so I think that's a need that could be looked at to have, and I don't know exactly the process for that happening, but if more people could qualify for Section 8 authorization, that would be helpful as far as a priority. But the highest priority, I think, for the town is immediate help. There's just nothing. And so for right now, if we could get some assistance, Nick's point is well taken. Our builders are, we have great builders, but they're booked out for a long time. The cost of wood has skyrocketed. The cost is not a good time. I've been told by local builders it's not a good time to be building, but in fact, that is our highest priority. And we do need some short-term, any kind of short-term relief we can get will be better off than we are now. over the longer term, indeed, we need to be looking at that as well. But right now we have a short-term disaster, and not only in Crestone, but I think throughout the San Luis Valley, and particularly in these small rural areas where non-local builders have historically had no interest in coming because the numbers don't work for them.
Thank you. Others?
Star, your hand is raised.
Yes, I wondered if one of the things that could be recommended or at least looked at is allowing more ADU units to be built on a given property, whether it's in the town or in the Baca or in Moffat. It seems that it's limiting, the existing laws are pretty limiting, and people can't expand even if they want to. So I would put that just in the recommendation of something to look at, that maybe that could be expanded in the future. And maybe there are reasons not to, and that's fine too, but I just think it's an issue that should be looked at.
Definitely.
Well, I would like to echo the short-term need for additional housing vouchers for people. We manage our 2 apartments here in Saguache, and I have quite a few people on my waiting list for our Section 8 subsidized property who cannot afford our rents at our other property, Preto del Norte, because a 1-bedroom at $444 a month is still too much for them. There are a lot of people in tough situations who are extraordinarily low income. You know, like you got that 30% AMI number, but, you know, I recently rented to a couple of households who are way, way below that 30% AMI. You know, like there should probably be another designation called extraordinarily low income or something like that. Because there's a huge difference between a single person with an income of $15,450 and somebody else with an income of $4,000 a year or $3,000 a year.
So Evan, can I ask, do you know in your community if independent landlords are also accepting Section 8 vouchers?
I'm unaware of any specifically that do, but there's a pretty fair incentive to accept it. Because at Preto del Norte, the state of Colorado pays us the market rate for that apartment. And usually we don't get the market rate for that apartment. And then also there's the potential of, if the resident damages the unit, that could be reimbursed through a process. So, I mean, if I had a second home and I was looking to rent, I mean, I would probably strongly consider a voucher holder.
So, and just for people on the phone, the voucher program that Karina and Evan have mentioned, it's the scenario is that you pay 30% of your income towards your housing, and then Division of Housing or HUD pays the rest. And so it is very secure for landlords. It helps people with very low incomes be competitive in the market. And when we were doing the Alamosa action plan, one of our focus areas was to increase the availability and utilization of vouchers. And it was pretty cool because the plan's only been published a month or so, and they already have 6 new vouchers. So I think putting intention towards that can be very effective. And so, yes, we can, that's certainly something we could explore as another recommendation. What else, who else would like to speak to what success might look like to you and what you feel the priorities are?
Yeah, Lisa and Mary?
Hi. So what's success look like? I think we as a community, if we can change that perception that living small or using repurposed materials and a lot of our natural building construction doesn't equate to the value of property value. I think that's a big thing that we've seen shift, that for some reason square footage equates to proper living environment. You know, personally myself, I've tried to get two low income loans from big agencies and still was declined because you can't show proper or very consistent income. And so even with some of these agencies trying to get low income, so what, focusing on the success place, I just think if we can really visualize, we're a really creative community with a lot of skills, talents, but if we can shift, whether it's doing some tiny house developments, some of these multi-purpose, but really utilizing our homeowner, builder, do-it-yourself construction type models, there's a lot we can get done with that barn raising type attitude. But until we can shift where the larger percentage of our properties are in the POA, it's really difficult. You can't even live on your property and try to build now as a homeowner builder if you're on a lower income, because that money has to go into a deposit instead of going into your infrastructure. So I just think there's a lot that we can do together and with the skills and talents if we can change. Go ahead.
You're cool. I just feel like from the neighbors helping neighbors perspective, what we would like to see is for people to have a comfortable quality of life within our community that can be attained without a lot of stress. I mean, we have people in their 70s and 80s living very marginally here. And it is even more of a factor in the larger county. So I think looking at a quality of life for everyone is super important.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're down to about 10 minutes and we have one more discussion. So is there anything else on goals that anybody would like us to address real quick?
I'll just say, I think it would be great if some of these regulations and the POA could be changed. And as the population is growing here, we actually might meet, I would probably in the next few years, I don't know exactly the numbers right now, but we could meet the number we need of people living here that would actually return their ballots to make some kind of changes that could be more substantial. So it's the 50%, don't ask me, I forgot how this all works, but it has to do with the number of ballots that are returned. And it's always too low to make a substantial change. I would love to see that happen. And one way to do that is to wait till the population number here increases enough. And the other is, of course, that somebody gets involved, and it would have to be homeowners from the POA to really advocate this issue of even ADUs, which we don't permit right now. And a lot of people do, of course, but it's not actually permitted. That's a big change I would like to see.
Excellent, thank you. All right, let's move then to expanding existing programs, and I'll let Dawn take the lead on this one.
Great. So currently there are several programs around the Valley that are being underutilized by Saguache County as a whole. Some of them being my programs like down payment assistance or home rehabilitation, others being Energy Resource Center and their energy efficiency upgrades and retrofits. we're just not getting a lot of applications for these programs, even though we work really hard at getting the word out for them. Like our home rehab program, I've been with this organization for 6 years. And in 6 years, I've done 1 home rehab and 1 or 2 DPAs or down payment assistance in Saguache County in 6 years. And we're doing 12 to 20 loans a year between the 2 programs. So it's pretty small utilization. For Energy Resource Center, they have wait lists in Costilla County, Alamosa County, Conejos County, but not in Saguache County. They can't spend all of the money that's allocated to them in Saguache County for lack of applications. So we need to figure out, how do we market these programs and get the word out to community members who are living in their homes as primary residents or wanting to purchase homes as primary residents in Crestone and Moffat, Saguache, so that these programs are being utilized in the areas, because they're available to your community members, but they're not being requested. So how can we help your communities with programs like these?
So I think it would be awesome just to hear of sort of like, what do you see being the most effective when people are getting the word out effectively about something in the community? And I think having neighbors helping neighbors here help is a great example, because I bet you're well networked. So sort of what do you see as effective? How might we help Dawn and the Energy Resource Center, promote in a way that people take them up on the offer? Because these are, they're tremendous programs in terms of no or low cost to the people receiving the benefits.
Lisa, can you expand on your comment in the chat, please?
The perception that there's years on the waiting list?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to several, I mean, Mary's one that can attest.
I'm a SSI disabled person, and I applied 4 years ago for Energy Resources. It took them 3 years to get to me, and this is in the town of Crestone. What I did that seemed to work was about every 3 months, I called them up and said, hi, am I still on the list? And when they came, they really helped a lot. They did a great job. I got a new heater, much more efficient. So I think it's a great program, but I don't know where the disconnect is with Saguache County, because there was a long waiting list when I was in line, which was only like a year, maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
I could also speak to that a little. I think the last real conversation, at least our group had with Energy Resource Center in some context, was at the San Luis Valley Rural Philanthropy Days. That was a couple of years ago. And it sounded like there weren't enough, whether it was installers or construction and the rehab and the people to do the work in this area. And so they were years behind. And so even from our perspective, it didn't feel like an immediate resource or someone we could go to with these right away. And that could just be lack of information or current information for our county.
So they do have their own team now. They have grown their staff to like over 20, or I think they're coming up close on 30 for the Valley. And they have contracts with electricians and plumbers. And it does, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing it for a nonprofit, it is a little bit slower. If you're doing it for a home, it typically moves faster. And if you're combining resources with other resources, so like if you're using ERC and the Housing Coalition's rehab program, then that moves you up on the list because you're combining multiple resources in one. And so I do know that 4 or 5 years ago, the program was lacking funding and they could only do like 10 houses a year per county.
That was probably, yeah.
Yeah, they did hire a crew that does nothing but apply for grants now, and they have increased their funding. And when I'm on their board, and the last time we talked to them, they had funding in your community and no applications. So I think they had one Swatch County application in 2020. And so we're constantly trying to send people to them, but it is getting better. And so we're trying to figure out how do we get that word out now in 2021.
Notice at the food bank.
Yeah, I think with Neighbors Helping Neighbors being that real crisis support and us partnering with them on projects, we can really start to get this message and the information out. So I think some follow-up meetings on these resources would be amazing.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anything else you need in this department, Dawn?
I don't think so. I think we're good there.
Excellent. Well, let's move to our wrap up. We're right at time. Over the next 24 hours, Donna and I will be in La Jara, Antonito. We were in Fort Garland Blanca yesterday. We're gonna do Hooper Mosca next this morning. And then tomorrow, San Luis. So the other communities were in that first part of the listening session. And then, getting your comments by July 23rd, we'll incorporate those and turn a final version of this in early August before turning our attention to, more action and implementation steps. So I really appreciate what a great, thoughtful group today. So much good feedback gathered. We're grateful for your time and engagement, and we hope that it will produce a much more robust and useful report as a result. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Really quick, I'll ask if you want copies of any updated reports, or we are posting them on our website, www.slvhc.com, or if you can put your email address in the chat before you sign off, so we can add you to our email list for upcoming events and reports. That would be very helpful. There are several on here today that I have not communicated with before, and we would love to add you to those lists if you haven't already sent me your email address today.
All right, we'll keep the meeting open while that's going on, but otherwise you're free to sign out and take off.
Well, I thank you guys for all the work that you did putting this together. It's really fantastic.
Thank you, Evan.
Thanks so much, Evan. Thanks so much for your feedback today and throughout the process.
Yeah, thank you. So you all have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much. Yes, this was excellent what you did. And I'm curious on that updated version about the Baca specifically. Okay.
We'll get those out probably sometime next week after we're done with our listening tour.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Andrew, how did it go?
Yeah, I thought it went